even Kobe Bryant talks about this, right? Like everyone's going to have different challenges that they need to overcome, right? And that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't want to hear, is because they want to just look at someone and say, okay, well, I can follow exactly what you did to get there. And there's part of that that's going to be true. But I think for me personally, it was really just showing up for a long enough period of time, right? And through that process, it was also, like I said, it was commitment to excellence. So I had trained like day in and day out. I did that in my first, second, third year as well. But to get into that top 1%, it was now taking all of that. And again, it was the action. That was my piece of the puzzle that I had to figure out, was really going out there and just working every single day with extreme focus and intention while I'm out there, right?
Welcome everybody out to the D2D podcast, the Golden Door deep dive segment where I, your host Roz, pick the brains of all the Golden Door winners of this past year. And we're very blessed to have with us from the great white north of Canada, Mr. Arjun Manhas. Dude, how the freak are you, dude?
Roz, thanks for having me, man. We were briefly just talking about that earlier, but it's good to be here. This is the first podcast that I've ever actually been on. And I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm doing so good. I'm just happy we finally got you on the podcast, man. You're one of the first guys I reached out to. We've been playing a little tag, but I'm glad we got you buckled in. So it's an honor. Congratulations. For those listening, Arjun is brought to us by the Alarm Space, which means he had over 400 installs of home security systems up in Canada where he sold. So what was the number that you ended on exactly?
604 this year.
Good freaking gosh, dude. That's insane.
It was a lot. It was a great year.
Dude, that's amazing. So yeah, just a big shout out, big congratulations to you for leading from the front. And guys, for those listening too, Arjun's going to be speaking on the alarm panel at D2D Con. So if you want to learn how to sell 600 alarms, get your butts to D2D Con. Arjun's a man of abundance. He's not holding his punches. So, dude, just walk me through. You're up in Canada. It's a little bit different up there. I want to know, how did you get into the industry? What brought you to smart home alarms, and how did you get to where you're at?
Dude, great question. I was actually hoping you were going to ask that question, and I assumed you would, just because for me being up in Canada, I think my journey has been so much different from, I think, a lot of the people working down in the States, just because we're so disconnected from the culture of door to door. And I didn't obviously figure that out until a few years into the industry, but taking it back to like when I first got into the industry. So that was in 2017. My twin brother and I we were going to go home over, like, when you're first new to university, your first couple of years in school, if you go away from home, you always want to go back home in the summers to go see your friends and see your family from high school, that kind of thing, right? So that was our plan. We were going to go back for the summer in our second year of university, and we were going to go deliver pizzas. I was young and I didn't really have a plan for the summer, just go make some money and visit family, right? But then one of my friends, he had done door to door the year before in Canada for Vivint. And he had talked to us a little bit about the job. And honestly, when he had, like, I'll go with the long version on this, but when he had explained the job to me, I was like, is door to door like a thing? Like, is door to door real? Because like in Canada, especially northern Canada where I grew up, like, it's cold. Just to put it in reference for you guys, like geographically, it's about 8 hours north of Vancouver. So it's on the west coast of Canada, quite far north, very wintry, very cold. And you get short summers, but nonetheless, I was like, yeah, it sounds cool, but I kind of thought it was a scam. Like, I didn't know that people even did door to door anymore. I've never had my door knocked on ever when I was young, like not one time. So he had explained a little bit more about the job. We went to an info night or two, and then really I was like, the thing that had got me sold on it was two reasons. I was like, this product is freaking cool. Like doorbell cameras, smart locks, and smart thermostats at the time, like that was brand new, because Canada's always a little bit behind the States, 5-10 years, right? So for us, that was like, I've never even seen this before. I was like, holy smokes, this is cool. I think I could sell that. I think people could benefit from this. And then second, and I think the reason why a lot of us joined was, he was like, I made 30 grand the previous summer. And I was like, well, you can make 30 grand, I can make 30 grand too, right? My opportunity cost was, even if I suck at this job, even if I like really blow it, I'm gonna make more than $7,000 to $10,000 that I was gonna make delivering pizzas. And more importantly, I'm gonna gain some human capital along the way, right? So I guess that was like the intro that got my foot in the door. And then I went out that first year and did pretty much exactly that. Had a decent first year. I finished with like 45, I think, funded accounts, I think around there, 45, 48. And I made about 28 grand. So it was able to, you know, kind of give me a taste of what a little bit of money feels like, you know, at a young age, 20 years old, this is kind of nice. So then it kept me, you know, coming back year after year, and obviously things had progressed quite a bit since then. So that's a little bit about how I got into it.
I love it. Yeah. What's wild about that story? I mean, it's not very different than a lot of other guys' stories where it's like, you know, they're presented that and it's like, what is this a freaking scam? Like 30 grand in 4 months. Like, what am I doing? Like running like a call center scam, like from something overseas. Like, this is ridiculous. But, you know, then you go out and you try it and it's just like, oh, holy crap. Like, this is insane. So love that. That's how long ago was that? That was a few years ago, right?
That was 2017. So I just finished my 7th year. Okay.
So you've been in the game for a minute then. Walk me through what's kind of your year over year progression then. You funded 45 accounts that first year. You know, what was the progression to get to 600?
Yeah, man. Great question. So first year to second year, first year did 45. Second year didn't do much better. I think I fell into that trap that a lot of second year reps fall into where you think you know it all, but you are a little bit better than you were in your first year, obviously. So by default, some of us will work a little bit less hard, right? Just because sales come a little bit easier in your second year. So that definitely happened to me. And I think I finished with like 60 in my second. I honestly don't remember. It was right around that mark. It wasn't much better than my first year, I remember. But nonetheless, it was better than my first year, right? So I could, you know, go to bed at night knowing that I had improved a little bit. So then going into my third year was when I had kind of made the decision of, look, if I'm going to do this thing, let's actually do it. And let's really take it a little bit more seriously and let's see what I can actually do. Let's see if I can at least get to that 100 level. Like, frick, I hope I can at least get to that 100 level, right? So I went out in my third year. I think I did around 120. So a little bit of a breakout year for me. That was like my first breakout year. And then company switch. So that was when Vivint had shut down in 2019, was going into the fourth year for 2020. Company switch, went over to Smart Haven. We're selling ADT at the time. And that year was like another breakout year, I guess, where I did 224 somewhere in there in about 3.5 months because we had knocked like more like the fall and the winter that year. It was weird. We joined in like end of August and knocked until the end of November. So we knocked like the colder months, and especially in Canada, it was like some rough months to knock. But nonetheless, did about 220. That was my first 6-figure summer. And then fourth year or fifth year was when I had passed that 400 barrier. So in 2021, I did 432. But again, being from Canada and being disconnected from the space, like I didn't even apply for the Golden Door work in 2021 because I didn't know like how to go about it and get it or whatever. And I've never, truthfully,
Sure.
I think it's one of my strengths. I've never done it for recognition. I never really cared, to be honest, like to go and have someone say like, you know, congratulations. It's just always been an internal why for me to go out there and prove to myself that I can do this job at a high level. So I never applied for it in 2021, but then last year, tough year personally. So I only worked for 3.5 months last year and I did about 330. Tough year personally. I had some challenges that I had to face. If you want to get into that later, we can a little bit.
Sure. And I will say too, for those listening, 300 accounts is a lot for alarms. So especially like in 3 months still, despite challenges, dude, that's impressive still. So
thank you. I appreciate it. But yeah, nonetheless, and this year, smoothest year I've had in my career so far. I took care of a lot of like the personal things that were affecting me last year. Coming into this year, got alignment and clarity and was really able to get my personal life on track. And then summer went smooth, one of the easiest years I've had. And yeah, 5.5 months we were out there in the field for, and then 604 was what I finished with this year.
That's absolutely incredible. So thanks for sharing all those stats. Yeah, me saying all of this, I sold Vivint before. I did 3 summers with Vivint, so I feel the pain. It's a lot of work to sling an alarm. And let me rephrase that. It's not a lot of work. It's the easiest product to sell in the world. What am I talking about, dude? Everyone wants a freaking doorbell camera. What am I saying? A lot of guys getting in their heads these days. I don't need to be saying that. It's amazing. So anyways, dude, walk me through. So, you're 1 to 2, not much of a jump. What do you feel like for you was the defining moment of having a breakout year? Like, how did you get that?
Dude, good question. And I've thought about this a lot. And I think over the years, my answer has changed. But what I've come to the conclusion in the last couple of years was, as cliche as it sounds, and is like, maybe is the answer that not a lot of people want to hear, but it was a decision, right? It truly was a choice of, look, dude, like in my first year, I went out and I had a 3-day, right? In my second year, I went out and I think I had a 5-day. So what that tells me was I could do the job, right? What really my piece of the puzzle, because I think on this path to success, and that's what I love about door to doors, I think it's a reflection of how you handle like the path to success, or just how you handle obstacles in life in general. It directly correlates. So for me, it was, do I really want to just live like mediocre, right? Do I want to pursue excellence, or do I want to be someone who settles for mediocrity and settles for less than my potential, right? Because everyone has their own piece of the puzzle. So for me, it was making the decision to really work, because that was my piece of the puzzle that I had to figure out. I always thought I was a hard worker, but I wasn't. But push came to shove, I clearly wasn't as hard of a worker as I thought I was internally. I mean, it showed in the results, right? So it was a decision to say, look, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to like actually just put the time in on the doors. No days off, no lunch breaks, none of that crap. That now getting into the golden door level, you just realize it's just crazy that people do that, right? But I went through that. So nonetheless, I think from the defining moment for me to have a breakout year was really making the decision to commit one time and follow the plan that I had laid out in place before that summer. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a lot of that is identity. A lot of that is standards. You raise your standards. So I feel like, like your first breakout year, you went from like mediocre rep to a good rep. So how do you become how does a good rep turn into a top 1% phenomenal great rep?
I think it's going to be different for every single person, right? Like I was saying earlier, it's figuring out what your pieces of the puzzle are, because even Kobe Bryant talks about this, right? Like everyone's going to have different challenges that they need to overcome, right? And that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't want to hear, is because they want to just look at someone and say, okay, well, I can follow exactly what you did to get there. And there's part of that that's going to be true. But I think for me personally, it was really just showing up for a long enough period of time, right? And through that process, it was also, like I said, it was commitment to excellence. So I had trained like day in and day out I did that in my first, second, third year as well. But to get into that top 1%, it was now taking all of that. And again, it was the action. That was my piece of the puzzle that I had to figure out, was really going out there and just working every single day with extreme focus and intention while I'm out there, right? So for me, it was one time sticking around for long enough, just showing up for a long enough period of time. And I think that's one thing that, especially in this industry, a lot of people don't do. Like, if you really think about it logically, a lot of guys do this job for like 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it is. They get like pretty decent in that time frame, and then they quit. But like but you just quit before you were at that tipping point, right? Like there was that tipping point where you're going to figure it out and you're going to get better, because you don't turn into a golden door rep overnight. Like that just doesn't happen. And I'm sure there's some guys over in the pest industry now that are doing it in their first year, but I mean, that's also a proximity thing. And that's something to be said about them, about who they're surrounded with, and a little bit innately about that person. But as a general scope, like no one does it in their first year or even second year. It takes time to achieve great things in life, period. Not just golden door. So for me, it was showing up for a long enough period of time and then committing to excellence, right? So I have to be getting better today than I was yesterday, whatever that looks like. And I did that for enough years, where that now all of those little like compounded decisions compounded into, well, now I can go out and achieve a golden door. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes a ton of sense. It's exactly like, you mentioned the compounding, the classic question of, would you rather have $1 million now or a penny that doubles every day for 30 days?
100%.
And what's crazy is the day 29 penny. It's like multiple thousands of dollars. It's ridiculous. But you go one more day and all of a sudden it's absolutely ridiculous. You wouldn't even look at the $1 million if you knew how much money that day 30 was going to give you. And that's the thing. It's like the 3 feet from gold principle too. So the compound, the year over year consistency and what that brings. So looking back though, I know you mentioned it's like, sometimes it just takes time. And I agree with you. In your opinion though, how could someone let's take like a first or second year rep and they want to expedite that process? What do you think that they would have to do?
Couple things. Probably gonna have to start, especially and I think this is becoming a common theme with a lot of guys who are trying to pursue golden doors now, but you got to develop that mentality of being able to push through when it's hard, right? You got to callous up your brain a little bit, like David Goggins talks about, and I know you guys have talked about in some of the other golden door podcasts and in other podcasts in general. So you got to be doing some hard things because there's going to be these different breaking points along that way that you're going to have to push through, right? And the only way you're going to get through those barriers is going to be through having the calloused mind and being mentally disciplined and strong enough in order to push through those. And the only way you're going to get through barrier number 6 is by going through barrier number 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then also to training, right? We have to be, especially when you're new, year 1, year 2, year 3, you have to be training so much that it hurts, right? And especially even in the off season, that's the time to develop, put in as many hours a day as you can into just doing the mundane, right? It's falling in love with the process and falling in love with the inputs. And that's going to be getting up early if you're a morning person. If not, I believe execution trumps routines always.
Ooh, I like that.
That's all how I've always, because I in 2021, just as a side note, when I got that golden door, I didn't get the golden door, I didn't apply for it, but when I did 430, I had really bad routines. I was not aligned in my personal life, but I was just good at executing, right? I was just able to get up and just take care of business. I do know you don't need to have things perfect in order to go out and do big things, but it's being able to, you got to develop that human capital to a point where you actually can go out and sell these big numbers now. And then you got to have belief too, right? In order to get to that top 1 or 2%, it's not just about big days anymore. It's about being able to replicate that big day consistently. And I know some people don't like that language, but that's how I operate. I believe that if you could, for me, when I'm knocking, I try to sell 8 alarms every single day. That's just what I sell on a day-to-day basis on average. And then, of course, I don't hit that every day, but on average, it's roughly about 8 a day. So I believe that if you can, through enough experience, through all that execution and that action, you can instill the confidence in yourself that you can replicate that success over and over. And then it's just going out there and having the discipline in order to go out and do what you did yesterday, day in and day out. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Guys, I hope you're taking notes on that. That was a very comprehensive overview, in my opinion, very filled with nuggets on that. So I want to talk about training for a little bit. What do you think are the things people should be training on? Is it things like word track, pitches, the psychology of sales, or what do you recommend?
Again, it's the piece of the puzzle, right? So this is where being in proximity with good leaders and good managers and having people around you who can help guide you is super, super important. But if we're giving a blanket statement to a brand new rep, I would say you got to start with some form. I always give my first year reps Psychology of Selling by Brian Tracy. Always, right off the bat, how to win friends and influence people. And then I'll start going into some mindset books, right? So then I'll start going, or habit books, right? If they have bad habits, then we'll start going into Atomic Habits and the compound effect. If they're negative reps, for example, they're just not positive, or optimistic, they're very pessimistic, then I'll make them read James Allen, how As a Man Thinketh, right? Or so kind of figuring out where your weaknesses lie and kind of, I would say, bring those up through where, not even weaknesses, when you're new, it's just where you don't have any expertise in. If you don't understand how mindset works, then go and read a book on mindset, right? If you don't understand how to communicate with someone properly, then go read a book on communication, because that's sales 101. And then as far as sales particular, I think How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins, an amazing book, helped me out a ton in my career. And then, you can start getting into some other books. I've never been a big fan of Grant Cardone, to be honest. Just never really vibed with his material. So a lot of it for me was those foundational books. And then I think that's one thing that's really cool about the States is you guys have a lot more availability and a lot more exposure to high level training. So I think within a lot of people's companies or within a lot of people's peer groups, they might have access to more training. For me personally, especially when Vivint pulled out of Canada, we had no access to training, no material, we had nothing. So from year 3 to year 7, it was just how can I figure this job out? And I had 10 pitches on my phone, one of the top reps, way back in the day in Canada. And I would just literally break down those 10 pitches. And that's pretty much what got me good. So I think it's just, if you want it bad enough, you'll figure it out, right? Kobe Bryant also talks a lot about that. It's if you really want to figure it out, you will, right? That's the beauty of being a human is we have consciousness and we have the power of choice and thought and all of this, is that we can go out and we can actively seek how to get better if we want it bad enough. Right. And that's kind of where my mindset is.
Absolutely. So I think that's incredibly powerful what you just said. If you want it bad enough, you'll figure it out. It doesn't matter. When there's a will, there's a way every single time. You have a unique opportunity in which you're selling 2 different products. So you mentioned you're doing telecoms and you're doing alarms. So what's kind of the strategy behind that? What's the psychology behind it? And then some of the benefits as well.
Dude, yeah, really good question. Strategy would be for me, because I'm an old security dog still, right? I started selling alarms at Vivint. I will always, actually, no, not always, but most of the time I will lead with the alarm, obviously, right? If I can't sell them the alarm, then it's just a pivot pitch, right? Then I'll pivot over into either an internet or TV or a mobility service. And then vice versa. So then also the other way is that a lot of the times, if they're with a competitor for internet or for mobility or for something or for TV or for example, then I'll open up with one of those services, try to add some value or provide a solution on that side of things, build the relationship, close the deal, and then I can swing in on the back end and bundle in an alarm a lot of the times because now the relationship's built, the trust is built, the credibility is there. It's just a sale after a sale, kind of like a referral, right? Or even in the first example, they say no to the alarm. I can add value on the internet, TV, mobility side of things. And then sometimes you can still come in on the back end and swing in an alarm because again, the relationship's built. It's just a sale after a sale, right? So that's the strategy. The psychology behind it is always just adding value. That's, I think, sales 101. It's how can we serve our customers while we're out there, right? And if you can come from that frame, I think it helps. It's always helped me a lot. Not I'm here to sell you. It's how can I come here and just add some value, right? So I keep an open mind when I'm out there in the field and I just have fun and just go conversate with people. And if there's something that I can add value with them, great. If not, I'm out of there. So I'm also very, I respect my time a lot. And I think anybody who gets a golden door does, right? But then it's just moving on quickly. So that was the strategy, psychology. And then what was the third piece? Sorry.
I don't remember. But anyways, I think that's really cool. And unfortunately, a lot of guys get kind of caught up in the weeds of selling 2 products at once or multiple products. How does someone stay on track and find success in cross-selling?
Dude, that's a really good question. That's something that I had struggled with for a couple of years because we had started doing the multiple services in 2021, early 2021. And I didn't really adopt it until late 2021. Because I was just stuck in my ways. I'm not selling an internet or TV. I just want to sell security, right? But then I think through that process of being so stubborn and stuck in my ways, I kind of started to see how I truly was not only missing deals for myself, because there's some sales I was losing by not being, like I said, not being open-minded enough. So from not being open-minded enough to add value on the other service, I was losing sales on the security because, like I said, I can swing in at the very end and a lot of times bundle in a security, right? So I guess for me, it's the sale after a sale. It's pivoting, right? So if you're selling more than one product or service, figure out where your bread and butter is, what you feel comfortable with, and more importantly, what you enjoy selling, because then it's going to make it funner and more like it's going to make the process a lot more enjoyable. So I always open up with that product would be my advice to anybody. And then if that doesn't work, the customer isn't buying, or you can't add a solution, or you can't provide value for them on that service, then it's the pivot pitch, right? Then you pivot over to the other product or service that you're offering. Does that make sense?
Yeah, dude, like it's crazy how a lot of guys get stuck in the weeds with selling two products, because it's like they can't quite like commit to the idea of selling two products, or it's like just a little bit too overwhelming for them, or they overcomplicate it for the customer. I remember it was like when I was still at Vivint, they were like introducing solar into it as well. And it was like, oh, well, like if you can't get them on a security system, try to do the solar set, or like things like that. But it just got a little complicated. So another tip is, simplifying, and then exactly kind of what like Arjun said, and then have the mentality of just adding value to the customer at that point. So kind of moving forward. So to sell 600 alarm security systems, smart homes, you have to be very, very sharp in closing. What did it take for you to get good at closing deals?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. I haven't really thought about that in a long time. Let me just gather my thoughts for a sec. I guess let's start with my philosophy of how I sell. I think that's going to be a good place to start on how to answer this. So for me, and this is something I'm super, super grateful for that I learned really early on in my career. It's the way that I look at sales. So, when we're especially joining Vivint, right? You join sales, you're taught bring value over price, right? Value exceeds price, a transaction is going to occur, like sales 101, right? So after like a couple months into my rookie year, I remember I was watching a training or something, and there's some top sales rep talking about his principle of bring the decision down, right? So then I started analyzing that for like a year, and into my second year, what my twin brother and I did is we kind of changed the way that we sold, and it really started to like be effective into our third and our fourth and fifth year as we got more experienced. But it was obviously value needs to exceed price, right? And this will come back onto your closing. This will answer how I close, but it's if I can bring the decision down, right? If I can just bring the decision down for the prospect that I'm speaking to, then obviously value still needs to be high, but it doesn't need to be like this high, right? It needs to be this high because it's this high of a decision, right? And then when I started to really understand that, 50 to 80 bucks, 55 to 80, 85 bucks a month for an alarm, when I really started to understand that it's not a big expense for a homeowner or for somebody renting a house, it just made closing a lot easier. And I think this is something that a lot of new reps, especially young guys, when they come into the industry, right? It's like, well, frick, I'm charging this person 80 bucks a month. It's like the average homeowner, especially in Canada, spends like $5,000 a month on their household expenses. Like it's pretty expensive to live in Canada, especially in a lot of the areas, especially in the areas that we're in, like in Western Canada and over in Eastern Canada and Toronto area. But it's expensive to live, man. So when you understand that like the price of an alarm is like 1% of their monthly expenses, that it made me just have a lot more confidence in my closing, right? And I think closing is not about the line, it's about how you present yourself throughout the whole process, right? Obviously there's your always be closing, and you got to have your closes that you use at the end to reclose and all of that fun stuff. But when you can present yourself in a way, at least for me, like Ed Milet talks about, where it's not trying to convince the customer against their will or against their opinion, trying to convince them that we believe something. Really, when they can see in you that you believe so wholeheartedly in what you believe, does that make sense? That you believe what you believe, that they're just going to trust you, right? And for such a transactional service and product, 50 to 80 bucks a month, that really can provide value for every single homeowner in some shape or form. Like I just have such confidence that I can sell literally every person I talk to. And I don't, but I literally think that I can sell every single person that I talk to, because of course they can afford 50 to 80 bucks a month. And of course, with how dynamic an alarm is, there's something that they can benefit from, right? So when I come from that frame, it makes closing quite easy for me. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100,000%. Because I remember, and I've talked about this on the podcast a few times, but it's like, when I first started selling Vivint, it was like, holy crap, like 70 bucks a month. Like, and I was used to only paying for like, probably like 50, 60 bucks a month for subscriptions and just everything piled together. So in my mind, I'm like 80 bucks. I'm like, that's like a lot of money. But in reality, and then you get like when you actually start like making money and, growing up and living in the real world, it's like, shoot, dude, like I spend 400 bucks a month on supplements. It's like people piss money away. Like it's not like an expense that's, even if it's over 100 bucks, 120 bucks, 125, 130 bucks a month. It's like, especially because like you said, it's just adding value at that point. It's ridiculous. This is a huge mindset shift that needs to happen within the industry with a lot of guys. And if you don't have that mindset, for those listening, it's like, just go experience the real world. Go get a car, something like that. It's like you're going to realize people have bills. It just is a thing. And it's not a burden to add $100 or even like $150 bill on people.
I couldn't agree more. And then just to backpack one more point on that, it's like, if you have that internal objection, I mean, it's just, if you have that internal objection that 150 bucks or 80 bucks or whatever is expensive, then of course you're not going to be able to close a deal. Just chalk it up that you're not going to be even a 100 account rep if you think that much is a lot of money, right? So a lot of it's breaking down those internal objections too, right? And they can be a wide variety of things, right? You get guys who are new and door to door that feel like they're bugging people all the time, right? Or this or that. So a lot of it's, if you can get rid of all of those internal objections, which takes time a lot of the times, then you're going to be in a better position to close every single customer that you come across. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Looks like I'm frozen too. But anyways, it's interesting because it does come across to the customer, because if you are presenting the price in a way where internally you feel like you're overcharging them, or in a way you feel like, this is something I personally wouldn't do, they feel that. They feel that so hard.
For sure, right? And then it's the classic alarm thing where it's like, well, it's 80 bucks a month, but you're saving a little bit on your energy, and then you get a home insurance discount, and it's all that crap, right? And then of course, like, there's no value. All you did was just devalue the heck out of your product. In turn, made the customer just think about the next deal, right? They're not thinking about any of the stuff you talked about. All they're thinking about is, well, how can I get a better deal on this now, right? It's just psychology. So it's just, keeping, your closing aligned with your frame of mind. And if you have a good, strong frame, then it's going to make your closing a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I hear you kind of talk about your sales process a little bit, it just feels like you have a very dialed in process that you take people through. It's like, the second you're invited into the home, it's like, okay, I'm your guide, A to Z. This is my process. Or do you feel like you run into very many objections like when you're closing deals, or do you feel like your process is so dialed in, it's like, it just kind of is smooth like butter?
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, no, I don't really feel like I get that many objections nowadays. It's just because it's the process, right? You experience these oddball scenarios enough times, especially after knocking doors for 7 years, that you just know what to expect, right? So when this scenario comes up, you just naturally say these few word tracks that are going to help diminish this objection that you might be anticipating. Do you know what I mean? Right? And then when you see this scenario, you talk a little bit like this, so that it can potentially make those objections not come up, and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, it's just that the process is just dialed at this point.
I love that. Yeah, I remember the first time I ever heard someone give a training where they're like, yeah, I don't really run into objections just because my process is dialed in. Like, I know exactly how to pre-frame things. I just lead people through the funnel. And I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah, no, and it's weird, right? Like, I never in a million years thought I would get to a point where, like, I might be in that category of my sales process, but it's just showing up for long enough, man. And super grateful and blessed that, I decided to stick around for 7 years.
Absolutely. And dude, we're super excited to have you at D2D Con, welcome you on stage, and especially to have you on the panel. This panel is going to be absolutely stacked. I'm so excited for this panel specifically, because it's like, I think everyone on it is at least a 400 to 600 account rep. We got you doing 600 accounts. We got Danny Layton, who's done 600 accounts. Tristan Pears, who's done 600 accounts. It's going to be absolutely wild to listen to you guys. And I'm beyond excited. So what are you most looking forward to with D2D Con?
Man, I was actually funny you mentioned that. We had a call with a lot of our leaders today. We were talking about that. But for me, especially like I was saying earlier, being up in Canada and being so disconnected from the door-to-door industry as a whole, places like D2D Con or D2D Con in particular, it's a special place for me. And I think for a lot of guys that are in my position where, first off, thank you guys, thank you Sam and the team for putting that on, because it's just a place where you get to go and you get to rub shoulders with the best of the best. Regardless, and this is one thing that I really love about it, is regardless of where you are at in your career, whether you're a brand new rep or you're a second year looking to level up a little bit, or you're whatever, looking to get a golden door, or you're a regional manager looking to recruit and expand, or whatever it is, right? You're a business owner, you're going to be able to get value. So I think that's something super special. And then even more than that, it's that you can truly you can rub shoulders with the best of the best, and they'll tell you their tips and their tricks, which does not happen in this industry, right? Typically golden door winners and top guys, they're very secretive. So I like the fact that at D2D Con, it's just a special place where people like myself can go out, get like industry knowledge that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get, like I said, especially being in Northern Canada, or just, go around, see some old friends, whatever it may be. But it's a special place. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, man. And guys, if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, January 25th through the 27th, make sure you get your tickets as soon as you possibly can. It's going to be absolutely amazing. So Arjun, before we let you go, do you have any call outs? Anyone you think should be hitting Golden Door that hasn't yet?
I like that.
I also have one in mind as well for your company.
I'm gonna call on Artez out.
Artez, are you listening, bro? Artez.
I know you can do it. It's going to be a choice for you, buddy. Let's see if you can do it in 2024.
Let's go. Artez, I know you personally. I know for a fact you could do it. You're tall, you're handsome, you're well-spoken, you're amazing. Like, go out and do this, dude. I speaking for this, I know him personally, so it's like, yeah, I'm calling him out as well.
Love that.
I got any others?
No. We'll leave it. Actually, a good one. I know he's going to do it next year. I think he's going to be the first Canadian to get a past Golden Door, James Fraser. So mark my words, you'll see James get a Golden Door and pest next year in Canada.
I love it. Well, guys, Arjun, thanks for tuning in. Everyone, thanks for listening. We'll see you at D2D Con in January. This has been the Golden Door Deep Dive segment. We'll see you guys later.